my mother, my brothers and sisters, we all played. Matter of fact, that's most of the way that we entertained ourselves. We were always listening to music when we, during dinner, after dinner, or something. And my father's the one that put the saxophone in my hand when I was about 10 years old. And he was always playing records by Coleman Hawkins, Lester Young, or Chu Berry. And my brother and I would used to practice when we were kids. Actually, my first band that I played with, you know, jazz band, quote unquote, was my brother, Tommy. And we played at a little place. They snuck me in. I think I was about 15 years old. They snuck me in a bar called the Perry Bar in Pittsburgh. And we used to play there every weekend. And Tommy was a great influence on me.
When did it become the saxophone? When did you change from the piano to the saxophone?
Well, my father used to take me to concerts like Jazz at the Philharmonic. I used to see Lester Young, Charlie Parker, Dizzy, Illinois Jacket, who became to be my mentor. And we used to go to the Syria Mosque, which is an auditorium in Pittsburgh. We used to see a lot of the bands like Basie, Duke Ellington, and all those cats. And for some reason, I saw Dizzy Gillespie's band at the Savoy. And I saw James Moody playing. And that horn just intrigued me, really intrigued me. And I told my father, I said, Daddy, I want to play this. I want to play that horn. And that's the way it began.
Come on. Come on.
At this time, I'd like to introduce these wonderful musicians I have with me. On keyboards, Mr. Bob Fox. On bass, Mr. Scott Ambush. On drums, Mr. Scott Peaker. On guitar, Mr. Dave Stryker. Thank you very much. We'd like to continue with the title tune from my latest album on Blue Note Records, entitled The Place.
Now, when I listen to this guy, I hear a lot of different things. I hear that big sound of some of the early instruments. I also hear a lot of the blues influences of some of the what we used to call punkers and the guys who used to walk the bar and that kind of stuff.
I did a little of that too. Well, actually, I think I went on the road when I was about 17 years old. My first professional gig was with a band, a rhythm and blues band they were called then, by the name of Lowell Fulton, and the featured pianist and vocalist was Ray Charles. And that's my first exposure to the road. We had an old ragged flexible bus, and Lowell Fulton on the side of it, featuring Ray Charles. And I got on that bus, left Pittsburgh and headed straight downtown. That's the first time I really ran into racism when they had double standards for everything. Separate water fountains, separate bathrooms. You couldn't go, when we were on the road, we couldn't stay in any hotels. And we had to go and stay in rooming houses. I'm a 17-year-old kid. First time away from home. No experience. We used to play in warehouses where they separate the room with a rope. Blacks on one side, whites on the other side. And we played for that. And I said, that's weird. I said, man, they all dancing and having a good time to music. I said, what's that work for? This is ridiculous. You ran into instances, we used to go to, if you wanted something to eat, you couldn't go to a restaurant. If you did, you had to go to the back of the restaurant. And they'd give you whatever. You wouldn't even give you a menu. They just give you whatever they felt like giving, and you paid for it. I was just calm. I mean, you saw a lot of, a lot of times our lives were in jeopardy just merely to play, to get from one gig to the other.
You were talking about your father playing the saxophone.
Yeah. That was the, other than the horn, I just recently got a horn that I really am very fond of. It was special when horn, but that's another story. But the horn that my father gave me was a 1936 Bush, and that was the greatest horn I felt. It was a great sounding horn, and of course, I'm more familiar with that horn. But when I was with Earl Brodsky, some guy convinced me by the name of Gene Red to trade with him. He had a Martin, very shiny, very beautiful looking horn. My horn was a great horn, because it was one of those, they didn't make many of those horns. 1936 Bushel with a small bell, good sound, and very, it's a great instrument. But I was looking at this horn, I said, man, I want that pretty horn, He said, yeah, okay, I'll trade you. And I straight up gave him that horn. That's the biggest mistake I ever made. He got the better of the deal. But that horn, I couldn't hardly play. It was just pretty, that's all. There's nothing happening. So I've been looking for Gene Red. If I find it, I want my horn back. It was great.
I would think that the particular instrument has a lot of influence on your style. I mean, if you get a certain sound, then that influences the sound that you play.
Well, of course, it's the instrument which you produce the sound with. But the horn isn't that important. It's from what you put into the horn. That makes the individual. My father used to teach me that, as far as sound, he always used to keep that in my head, about getting a good sound out of the instrument. He used to teach me, to stand in a corner, really, and just play whole notes from the bottom of the horn to the top of the horn, chromatically. And I didn't understand that. I said, he used to ask me, he said, did you hear the sound? Did you hear the note? I said, of course, I can't hear none of them standing in the corner of the horn, but I didn't understand exactly what he meant. He was teaching me how to control it, control the sound, how to attack it, and just how you can get many different effects from just one note.
You were talking about the sax from your father. The saxophone that you play now is a really beautiful instrument. Where'd you get that?
You know what? It's a friend of mine who's been. I've been buying horns from him, and he repairs my horns by the name of Rob Baltimore in New York. And he told me about a new horn that Selmer made, and wanted me to come down and try it. So I went down to his shop, and it was this beautiful black horn. And I said, man, this horn looks so gimmicky. I'll bet that horn's nothing, because it looks so very, like a commercial type horn. But I said, you sure this is a Selmer? He said, yeah, man, try it, And when I played it, it was just fantastic. I said, man, I fell in love with the horn. So I bought the horn. It's a black lacquer horn, and it's made in Paris. The whole horn is made in Paris. Where other horns are shipped, they make them in Paris, but they ship them to Elkhart, Indiana, to assembly. This horn everything is handmade on it, and it's just a great horn. I can't blame my mistakes on the horn anymore. But that's the story behind that horn.
It seems that there are a lot of young people who are getting interested in music. A lot of young people are coming to it. They're turning away from some of the popular styles of American music and checking out this classic music that's been around.
Well, I don't think I've heard people say there's a resurgence in jazz coming back. How long has it been? It's been sustaining me for a long time. I said, I don't understand what they mean. That's why I don't like to use that word jazz. I like to use the phrase America's classical music, and I stole that from Max Roach. But that is a great phrase for me because jazz has too many ambiguous meanings to me. It means, because Louis Armstrong plays jazz, they put him in that category. So does Miles, and Dizzy, and Bird, and Sidney Bechet. That's two different styles, two completely different ways of playing, but they're still jazz, and that kind of makes it confusing, I think, to the average layman listening to it. So I don't like to use that word, jazz, per se, because there's so many ways to play this music called jazz. They've categorized me in my career, as being a bebop player, rock and roll player, fusion player, confusion player, pop player, but I still be playing my same style. So I think that kind of makes it confusing, as what the music. I just consider myself as just playing music, and I hope they like it.
We'd like to play a John Coltrane original entitled Impressions. One, two, one.